Welcome to Cloud Config 101. Today we're going to be talking about encrypting everything and making sure your storage is secure. Encryption has been around for a very long time, and it was one of the best ways to protect your assets when they were moving around. If we go back to the beginning of laptops and when users would work outside the office, encrypting the hard drive was one of the key measures of making sure that that asset was secure when it left the organization. If we look at data centers either sat within your office premises or they sat within a tier 3 data center somewhere outsourced where there were controls and locks in place for any kind of access. For public cloud, all of this risk is outsourced to another third party, whether that be Amazon Web Services with AWS, Microsoft, or Google Cloud Platform. For this scenario, we're going to look at AWS and encrypting all of your assets and all of your objects in AWS. At the beginning of AWS, one of the main risks associated was having public-facing object storage. This being making sure your buckets were accessible from a public IP address. And one of the key criteria was making sure that was switched off. Over the years, AWS has made it so it's harder to gain public access and to give public access. But one of the other features that they've left behind or not made as difficult to miss is setting up encryption of your bucket from the outset. If you don't set it up from the outset, you'll have to make sure that each object you upload is going to be encrypted, which means that you're either going to outsource the risk to an employee or someone that's going to be uploading all those files, or trying to do it using policies, which is even more difficult. One of the best ways is just setting it up natively to encrypt everything within this S3 bucket. There are 3 types of encryption in AWS. There's S3 managed, which makes sure that all the files are uploaded and they use their own keys. There's key management service where you can create your own PKI certificate keys within AWS. Or if you already have a certificate authority, you can bring your own certificate to AWS and use that for your encryption. The other area of object storage we should also look at whilst we're looking at securing these environments is making sure that we've got anti-malware scanning turned on. This isn't something native with AWS, but it's available through third parties. And especially if we're using lifecycle management policies, it's a key thing to make sure that no malicious files or malicious content is uploaded into one of your buckets. A key scenario when looking at malware scanning and using encryption at the same time is when we look at lifecycle management policies. What I mean by lifecycle management policies is helping you gain the most money and the best spend for your storage for long-term purposes. Within lifecycle management, we can use frequently accessed, so when you're accessing the data or the object on a very, very regular basis, down to infrequent access, where it takes a little bit longer to recover. One zone infrequent access, if it's only going to be located in one place, or using something like AWS Glacier, where it's going to be long-term cold storage, but at least you know when it's in there that A, the file or the object itself is encrypted because that's set up by the default policy. But B, you can also make sure that no malware or malicious content has also been archived into your long-term storage. These 2 areas are very, very critical to making sure, especially in a legal or any kind of data retention type and scenario, you're going to be looking after the data long-term and know that it's encrypted and safe within that environment. As part of the shared responsibility model, AWS and any other cloud platform provider will take care of the infrastructure itself, but it's on you, the end user, or the administrator to make sure that any way that you interface, any storage or any assets associated to your environment are taken care of and protected by you, which is why encrypting everything is the number 1 thing you should do within any public cloud environment. You've outsourced the risk of anyone entering your office, your premises, or taking the hard drives themselves. So make sure you're treating it as if it's an outsourced asset. And also, anti-malware, making sure that no malicious content can enter your environment or corrupt any of your long-term storage. If you want to look at an ambassador for encrypting everything, you don't need to look far from AWS. And all you need to see is Amazon's CTO Werner Vogel's and what he wears to nearly every keynote speech, an Encrypt Everything t-shirt. So if it's being portrayed and being advertised by the vendor themselves, please take it on board and make sure that your assets are secured and protected. The top 3 things that you should be doing to make sure that your object storage is secure. Number 1, encrypt everything. I can't stress it enough, encryption is one of the best and most successful tools for making sure that your data is protected. Make sure you run or use an anti-malware agent if you're using any kind of outsourced storage, especially if you're using long-term storage. It's something that in the long run will pay dividends and make sure that any assets you upload or put for long-term cold storage are going to be protected and are also rid of any malware, malicious links or agents.